Good afternoon. We're back with another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series. Today is a card review of the Lost Realm expansion. So, this expansion is presenting the Dunedain synergy, or developing the Dunedain synergy. Let's take a look. Aragorn, Tactics version of Aragorn. 12 threat, 2/3/2, 5 health, just like his other versions. He's Dunedain and Ranger and Warrior, and each enemy engaged with you gets -1 shields. So for all intents and purposes, he's got 4 attack. After Aragorn participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, choose an enemy not engaged with you and engage that enemy, so essentially you can get it out of your staging area and before questing the next turn, and also trigger any when engaged effects, which we'll see some of those this expansion. Well, for a battle hero, he's not as good as Bjorn at attacking. Bjorn can do 5 attack, and he's not as good at Bjorn as defending. Even though he has 1 more shields, he has half the health of Bjorn. But he does have 2 willpower, so. And he can use Aragorn attachments. If you're running leadership, you could use Celebrian Stone or Sword That Was Broken. I think there's a ring that benefits him as well. Overall, in a vacuum, if I was going to use a hero, Bjorn or Aragorn, I'd use Bjorn. So Aragorn would be a backup like Erkenbrand. He's a little bit worse than Baragon. Erkenbrand is. Aragorn's a little bit worse than Bjorn. Not a lot worse, but a little bit worse. However, there may be synergies, Dunedain synergies, to take into account that will elevate him above Bjorn. So let's continue on and take a look. As he is, I don't think he's good enough to be the best battle hero in the game. So, when would you use him with Bjorn? Probably not unless you're doing battle or possibly siege, but probably battle questing. And that seems rare after Heirs of Numenor, but we'll see about the future. But let's take a look at the whole Dunedain synergy after all the cards. Halbarad, Leadership, 10 threat, 2/2/2, 4 health. Those are not good stats. While you are engaged with an enemy, Halbarad does not exhaust to commit to a quest. You may optionally engage 1 additional enemy during the encounter phase. So far they're really emphasizing the engaging enemies. Usually you don't want a lot of enemies engaged with you. Usually you want to clear out enemies as soon as they engage, because otherwise they just keep pounding on your defense until you guys die. So this is an interesting concept. So far I haven't seen anything that makes it worth it to keep enemies engaged, so let's keep going. Weather Hills Watchman, 2 cost, 1/1, 0, 2 health. After Weather Hills Watchman enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a signal card and add it to your hand. What are the signal cards? Let me check. Okay, so it's like Dunedain Mark, Dunedain Warning, Quest, Signal, and Ranger Summons. Are there any others? Let me check. Keep checking. Yeah, so those are the only signals. The Dunedain Mark, Quest, Signal, Warning, etc. So that's not that good to go get one of those. Search the top 5 cards of your deck for a signal. I don't think much of that effect. I wouldn't assign any value to it really, which means this card costs too much for what it delivers. Unless Dunedain synergies get crazy. Dunedain Hunter, 0 cost, 1 willpower, 3/1, 3 health. After Dunedain Hunter enters play, search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for a non-unique enemy and put it into play engaged with you. If no enemy enters play by this effect, discard Dunedain Hunter. They're really pushing this engagement thing. So far, there's nothing that makes that pay off. I mean, 0 cost is nice, sure, but at the cost of an enemy that might just kill this card. Am I missing something here? Or are there cards coming that'll make this pay off? Let's see. And we'll talk about all of these cards that are really pushing engaging enemies at the end, assuming it's going to make sense at some point. Sarn, Ford, Sentry, 3 cost 2102. Dunedain Scout. After Sarn, Ford, Sentry enters play, draw 1 card for each enemy engaged with you. So I like the concept of encouraging you to battle enemies, but keeping them in the engagement area is counterintuitive, and so you want to kill them as soon as you can. Leaving them permanently engaged with you seems undesirable, and drawing 1 card for each enemy engaged with you doesn't make up for it, especially with a card that's already undercosted. Let's keep going and see if it makes more sense later. Warden of Anuminas. There's an accent on it, so I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. Anuminas. Anyway, 4 cost, 022, 3 health. Warden of Anuminas gets 1 willpower for each enemy engaged with you. There'd need to be 4 enemies engaged with you before this would be good. With Sarn, Ford, Sentry, you'd need to probably draw 2 cards at least for that to be good. Warden would need 4 enemies engaged to be good. This seems unlikely. It seems to be unlikely to be something that would happen naturally, and it seems to me unlikely that you would want to set that up. So let's keep going. I'm confused by this expansion so far. Ranger Summons. 1 cost, play only if you control a Dunedain hero. Shuffle one of your set-aside Ranger of the North allies with the encounter keyword into the encounter deck, then remove Ranger Summons from the game. Okay, so the way that works is you have this card with an encounter back. Ranger of the North. You set it aside out of play at the beginning. It doesn't count toward your 50-card deck. You don't play it unless the card instructs you to. Now this card instructs you to shuffle one of them into the deck. If it's revealed, it's basically a dud for the enemy and a benefit for you at once. As a shadow card, I think it does nothing. It's an interesting concept. It also surges for the enemy. That's bad, so it's not a dud. But you take control of it at that point and it does something for you. So basically it costs 1 card, then you have to wait a while. 1 card and 1 cost, and then you have to wait a while. And maybe it comes up and maybe it doesn't. That's so much variance that this would need to be a really powerful effect when it actually did come up. Maybe if it didn't surge it would be good, but it does surge. I don't think I'd play this. It's just too random. It's too unreliable to dedicate 3 of to that. It would need to be a really powerful effect on the encounter card to make it worth it. And this isn't. It's okay, but it's not really powerful. Interesting idea, though. Keep an eye on that for the future. Tireless Hunters, 1 cost. Play only before the resolving enemy attack step. Combat action, choose an enemy not engaged with you. Engage that enemy. Then discard a shadow card from that enemy if able. Okay. So, yet again, another card focused on getting enemies engaged with you. And so far, the payoff has only been +1 willpower on this guy and drawing 1 card for each enemy on this guy. Not a lot of payoff for something that could be a very difficult challenge to handle. And the reason it's a very difficult challenge to handle, having a lot of enemies engaged with you, is because then your deck has to be built for defense and attack, and then you're not built for willpower, and in solo play that's usually very bad. Unless you're in a battle or a siege questing situation, you usually need willpower as one of your primary focuses of your deck in solo play. Like, how am I gonna get quest progress is always a concern in solo play. And the hardest quests make you do a lot of battling and a lot of questing, or a lot of questing and a lot of defending or something like that. In multiplayer, I guess typically you'd have one player more focused on questing and one on attacking, so you could make sense maybe to build a Dunedain deck more so in multiplayer than in solo play. In solo play, unless you're siege or battle questing, this concept really doesn't make sense. So far, let's keep going. Expert Tracker, 0 cost. After you engage an enemy, exhaust a scout or ranger character to place X progress tokens on a location. X is the engaged enemy's printed cost. Okay, well, if you're exhausting the character anyway, why wouldn't you just commit it to the quest in the first place? You don't commit it to a quest until after you see an enemy, and then you exhaust the character? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that card is good. Why wouldn't you just commit him to the quest in the first place? Every now and then I see a card like this that just doesn't seem to make sense. Like the Late Adventurer card. Place X progress. Well, okay. After reading it more carefully, placing progress tokens on a location is a little bit different than just committing your ranger or scout to the quest, because you can do it on a location in the staging area that's not active yet. Typically, you're going to do that for 2 or 3 though. And that's usually not enough to clear a location on its own, which means you'd need 2 of these or multiple different placing progress tokens effects. So I think that can be an okay effect, but it's hard to set up and it's slow. So I don't think this is a good card. It's going to be a dead card a lot. It's going to be underwhelming effect a lot. So I don't think it's good. Heir of Philandil, 2 cost, attached to a Dunedain hero, exhaust Heir of Philandil to reduce the cost of the next Dunedain ally you play this phase by 1 for each enemy engaged with you. Okay, so that's some payoff. Some pretty dramatic cost reduction in the event that you have a lot of enemies engaged with you. You'd probably need to have like 2 engaged with you each turn to make this good though. Steward of Gondor generates 2 resources for free. This one would generate 2. You'd need like 3 or 4 enemies engaged with you to make this good for multiple turns, and man, that's dangerous. Man, these payoffs are so low compared to the risk. The Heir of Philandil, the Sarnford Sentry, the Warden, they're giving you pennies in exchange for dollars of risk. That's the way it seems to me. I've heard people talk about the Dunedain synergy before. Maybe they develop it to a point that it makes sense, but right now this does not look good for solo play at all. I can't say I think much of this at all in solo play. Athelas. Attached to a Dunedain or healer, discard Athelas and exhaust attached character to heal all damage on a character, and you may discard a condition attachment from that character. That's not bad, but you discard it, so it's a one-time use. So, in terms of your condition removal, would you play this, or would you play like Power of Orthanc? Well, this requires you to exhaust a Dunedain or a healer. Some of your Dunedains could be allies. That's not as high a cost as exhausting a hero. But Power of Orthanc removes a condition for free for 2 threat. Healing all damage on a character is okay. You don't need it to happen that often though. Most quests you can get away with no healing. So I think you'd play this more often for the condition removal, and I think there's better ways to do that, cheaper ways. So it's not that that effect is bad on Athelas, it's just overshadowed by more efficient effects. But keep in mind the healing all damage. That could come into play later. Secret Vigil, 1 cost, attached to an enemy, limit 1 per enemy. Attached enemy gets -1 threat. When attached enemy is destroyed, reduce each player's threat by the attached enemy's printed threat. So it gets -1 threat while it's out. And then you probably get 2 or 3 threat reduction later for 1 cost. That's not good. Elrond's Council gives you 3 threat reduction for 0 plus 1 willpower. And this costs 1. If it costs 0, it might be worth a look. But at 1, it's overcosted relative to other threat reduction effects. And I'm pretty sure the reason it's overcosted is because it's in tactics. And I've said this many times before, but I don't like cards that are overcosted because they're off sphere. Typically, Spirit does the threat reduction, and this is tactics, and that's why it costs 1 and not 0. And I don't like cards like that. If I want a card like that, I'll just play Spirit with a song if I have to, in order to make it work. Star Brooch. 1 cost, attached to a Dunedain or Noldor hero, limit 1 per hero. While you're engaged with an enemy, attached hero gets plus 1 willpower and cannot have its willpower reduced. Okay. 1 willpower for 1 cost isn't very good. And it wouldn't be very good if you didn't have to be engaged with an enemy. The caveat that you have to be engaged with an enemy makes this bad. It can stack, but still. The cannot have its willpower reduced isn't going to come into play very often. But I'll keep it in mind in case it needs, in case this counters a specific encounter deck challenge. But as it is, the cost and the situational cost, meaning you have to have an enemy engaged with you, are too high to make this good. It could be I'm just missing something with this whole synergy. Maybe this makes sense because of quest design or something like this, but now this synergy right now does not look good for solo play. Gather information. It's a side quest. So basically you put this in your deck, and when it comes up, you put it with the other quest cards, and then you can choose whether you want to do the side quest or the main quest at the beginning of the turn. If you choose the side quest and you gain the 4 progress, it's limit 1 per deck. After this stage is defeated, each player may search his deck for 1 card and add it to his hand. Well, that's a powerful effect. It's going to be slow because you have to spend a turn doing it. So that card has to be like an essential card for a combo, like when you're playing Elrond Vilya and you need to find Vilya or something like that. This could be good. But if you don't have any like essential combo cards in your deck, I don't think I'd run this. Because spending a turn on doing it is kind of not that good in solo play. Now, if you did it in... Because the cost in solo play is much higher than it is in multiplayer. Because making 4 progress as a solo player is 4 progress per player. If you had to make 4 progress as a single player, it's 4 progress you have to make. Well, let me rephrase that. In solo play, you're making 4 progress and you're getting 1 card. In multiplayer, you're making 4 progress and you're getting 4 cards. That is a huge difference. That's a colossal difference. So much better card in multiplayer than it is in solo. I wouldn't say this entire expansion is much better in multiplayer than it is in solo, or likely to be much better in multiplayer than it is in solo, because you could build a purely combat deck around the Dunedain in multiplayer, which wouldn't really make sense in solo play unless you're playing Battle Quest. So now that we're to the end, I would say this entire expansion is just not good in solo. Maybe it makes sense later. Maybe they develop it. I don't even think there's a single card in here worth playing in solo play. Except maybe Aragorn situationally. Tactics Aragorn. I'd still prefer Bjorn generally, but I might mess around with Tactics Aragorn a little bit. But other than that, this expansion is just not good at this point in solo play. That doesn't mean I won't try it. But I'd be shocked if it's better than I think. I'd be really shocked. I do not think this is good in solo, which is pretty disappointing for a new expansion. It's pretty clear to me this has a strong multiplayer focus and doesn't really make sense in solo. Particularly the gather information. Why in the world would you not make it easier to complete as a solo player, or like make it scale up in difficulty with more players. The benefit scales up. Why wouldn't the difficulty scale up or down based on the number of players? I don't think that makes sense. Well, interesting. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's something I don't know. I don't think I've seen an expansion this bad for solo play before, so maybe there's just something I'm not seeing here that makes this make sense. I may try it just to see. Maybe net deck something, because I can't conceive of a deck that would be good right now, but maybe I'll net deck something, and maybe somebody came up with some combination that makes this good in solo play. And if that's the case, perhaps I'll do a new video on it, or amend this video, but as it stands now, I do not think this is a good expansion in solo at all. I would skip right by it if you're not a completionist going for all the quests. Or you know, a collector or something like that. Anyway, thanks for watching.